At L&M Fine Jewelry, we hand select our diamonds to give you the very best prices possible. Monty knows a great deal when he finds one. Find your great deal at L&M Fine Jewelry.
Your diamond destination.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Samuel Akem here, and I'm back with another one. It was a great weekend in college football. I appreciate you guys for continuing to tap into my channel. It was an amazing weekend. We had a really good South Dakota versus South Dakota State game. I'm going to talk about that one a little later. Montana played Northern Colorado. That was a really good game. You had Sacramento State and Idaho State. That was a pretty good game. That went into overtime. And then you had Eastern Washington and Idaho. It was a better game. Jack Lane is back, so we'll talk a little bit about that and what that means for Idaho going forward. Their defense got beat up a little bit, 28 points by Eastern Washington, but Eastern Washington has never had an inability to put up points. They've had an ability to stop people from putting up points on them. But we're going to get into all of that this week. Thank you guys for tapping into the channel. Make sure you guys remember, you guys can catch any of my audio from this video on Skyline Sports. It'll be dropped on the same day that, most times the same day that my video drops on Tuesday. The audio will be up, or it might even be up on Mondays. But you guys can catch the audio from all of those. Under the Helmet, we are back this week. I sat down with the running backs on Sunday, so we are back with Under the Helmet. We had some technical difficulties, so we didn't get the Xavier video out when we actually did him. So we actually did Xavier Harris again on Sunday. So you guys can check that out. That'll be dropped on Thursday. And then, yeah, so I want to thank you guys so much for tapping into the channel. Got a lot of good things going on. Skyline Sports has most of my audio of anything. You guys can check my videos. That'll be embedded on Skyline Sports as well. Under the Helmet will be embedded on there as well. And then my audio from this video is on the Big Sky Breakdown. So thank you guys for tapping in. Thank you guys for viewing my channel. Thank you guys for showing me love. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Make sure you guys leave me a comment down below, and we will get straight into this week's video. Okay. First things first, Montana was back after their bye week, as was Northern Colorado after their bye week. Northern Colorado, the last time they played, they beat Weber State. Montana, last time they played, they beat Northern Arizona. So they played at Northern Colorado in Greeley, and Montana once again got a 24-0 victory against Northern Colorado. They now have shut out Northern Colorado 3 straight games, 40-0 last year. I think in 2021 it was 33-0. Well, no, it couldn't have been 33. I cannot remember what that 2021 score was. If somebody remembers it, leave it down in the comments. But 99-0. So you got 24. So it must have been 37. No. What is my math? What is my math at? 35-0? Was it 35-0 in 21? Because they got 40-0 last year, 24-0 this year. So that's 64-0. So that leaves 35 points. So it must have been 35-0 in 2021. I don't know. You guys let me know in the comments. I think it was 35-0. That is how the math lines up, because they said it was 99-0 since the last 3 times. I don't know. Either way, it was a great game for Montana. They played really well. Ayat got a lot of the playing time this week. Fife was 6 for 8 for 48 yards. Ayat was 14 for 22 for 149 yards, 2 touchdowns. Nick Osmo was really the key player for Montana this week. He had 13 carries, 170 yards, no touchdowns. Eli Gilman did it in the air, and he also did it on the ground. He had 12 carries, 39 yards, and a touchdown. And he also had 4 receptions for 50 yards and a touchdown. So really good game from that standpoint. The leading receiver for Montana was Xavier Harris. He had a 1 long 35-yard reception, but he had 3 receptions for 48 yards and no touchdowns. So only 2 touchdowns for the Montana. No, 3 touchdowns. Yeah, because Ian Finch had 1 receiving touchdown. So 3 touchdowns. Ayat had 2 passing touchdowns. Eli Gilman had 1 rushing touchdown, and then they had a couple of field goals. So pretty decent game for Montana from that standpoint. I honestly expected them to put up more points, but I also understand last year they had Northern Colorado after the bye. This year they had Northern Colorado after the bye as well. And I understand how sometimes a Coach Haupt team, we always struggled after bye weeks, and that is kind of what it seemed like showed right here after their bye week, that they were a little slow, a little sluggish to get going. Just weren't able really to put up as many points as I thought they would. Their defense did a good job. Obviously, they got the shutout. They had an interception in the red zone, and then on one of the other times that Northern Colorado got in the red zone, they went for it and did not get it. So good for Montana. They got 3 takeovers, which is another thing that they have not been able to really do at a high level this year. So them getting that takeover was really big time. They moved to 3-1 in conference. Their overall is 6-2. Northern Colorado is 1-3 in conference. Their overall is 1-7. So they're really struggling right now. Northern Colorado, They got a win, first win in a couple of years, but they've really been struggling. For them, their leading rusher was Jaquez Robertson. He had 8 carries for 28 yards. Their quarterback, Kiai Keone was 15 for 31, so about 48% completion percentage, 153 yards, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions. One thing I was confused about was, one thing they talked about on the broadcast at the beginning of the game was how Keone was like a rushing quarterback, and that's something that they really use him for, and he only had 1 carry, no rushing yards. That might be because some tackles for loss or some sacks or whatever the reason is for that, but he didn't really run the ball. They didn't really try to run him at all. Maybe he's hurt. Maybe Montana made it, but like they didn't even try. So that doesn't even tell you that Montana was stopping it. It just tells you that they didn't even attempt to get him on the ground, which was interesting for me. Cash Cheeks was the leading receiver. It says he's number 18 on here, but I think he was number 30 or number 19. I can't remember. There was 2 Cheeks on the team, Carver Cheeks and Cash Cheeks. They got to be brothers because I don't know many people with last name Cheeks. But he had 4 receptions for 38 yards. David Afari, who was a running back, I believe, had 2 receptions for 34 yards. And he was their second leading rusher with 7 carries for 22 yards. So not a great game from Northern Colorado. I don't have much to say about this game. I expected Montana to win this game. Northern Colorado has been a pretty easy out for people in the Big Sky for quite some time now. And if you listen to Skyline Sports and Colter Nuanez, he talks about how he doesn't think Northern Colorado is the best team for the Big Sky Conference, because if you know that you're a guaranteed win for every team that comes up against you, that is not a good thing for the Big Sky Conference. So I don't know what the Big Sky has to do. I don't know what Northern Colorado has to do to get better players. We talk about it a little bit on Unsolved Mysteries of the Big Sky with Colter Nuanez on our every time I record with him. So you can catch those on the Big Sky Breakdown as well on Skyline Sports. But I don't know. I don't know what they need to do to get better. I don't know what they need to do to improve. I don't know why they've been struggling so much. I don't know. I don't have the answers for Northern Colorado, but I do know that Montana has shut them out 3 straight games. I know that they got the win. I know that they won 24-0. I know that they moved to 3-1 in conference. I know that Montana still has a chance to win the Big Sky Conference. They just got to win out. And obviously they have Portland State this next week, but they got UC Davis coming up, and that is going to be a big opportunity for Montana. Or they got Cal Poly, not Portland State. They got Cal Poly coming up. I don't know where. Portland State's after UC Davis, but they do have Portland State coming up, so I wasn't wrong. But they got Cal Poly next week, and then they got UC Davis the week after that. So that's going to be the next test. But I don't want them. They obviously can't sleep on Cal Poly. They're going to San Luis Obispo, and it's going to be a big time game for them. So we will see what they were able to do. But you guys let me know what you guys thought about this Northern Colorado game. Do you guys think? What do you guys think it told you? I don't think it told us much about Montana, but I mean, it's good that they got the win. It's better to win and fix whatever you did wrong than lose. I think they tackled a little better, but you guys let me know in the comments, and I will move on. I want to cut in here real quick and talk about this South Dakota versus South Dakota State game. I thought it was an amazing game. I thought it had some big-time Missouri Valley implications. That allowed South Dakota State, if they lost that game, South Dakota State probably would have been out of the running for the Missouri Valley Conference title. South Dakota would have been, really looking good for a conference title, but it was a really, really good game from both standpoints. It was a pretty good defensive game. We've been seeing South Dakota State get in some of these defensive battles with some of these better teams in the Missouri Valley. There's some really good defense being played in the Missouri Valley. South Dakota has a really good defense. South Dakota State has a really good defense, and North Dakota State has a really good defense. They're playing some good ball. Missouri State is a sleeper in that conference. We are not going to get into that right now, but they are somebody to keep an eye on and somebody that cannot be slept on. South Dakota, man, go watch my breakdown. I did a breakdown on South Dakota versus South Dakota State. That should have dropped yesterday. Please go check that one out. It was a good game. But man, South Dakota had so many opportunities to win this game. South Dakota had, it seems like South Dakota State, who was playing at home, it's not necessarily that they gave up anything, but it's just South Dakota had opportunities. They had a touchdown that was negated by a illegal formation or illegal shift. They had a long play that would have got them deep into the red zone that was negated. It was dropped. It was a little underthrown by the quarterback. He was a little under pressure. They had an interception thrown by their running back where they didn't even have to really do a running back pass. They were moving the ball successfully on the ground and being able to throw the ball in the air. They didn't need to do the play they did. It just was ugly. And then when they had a chance to close the game out in regulation, they fumbled a snap, and it makes it a longer field goal than it would have been. Granted, the field goal was still very manageable for the field goal kicker. He's got to hit that. He misses it for whatever reason, but just mistakes left and right for South Dakota. It seemed like they did not want to win the game. It seems like South Dakota State wanted to win the game more than South Dakota did. I mean, it really seemed like nobody wanted to win the game because South Dakota State wasn't really making a ton of plays either. But South Dakota, I would say, made more mistakes down the stretch than South Dakota State did, and that's why they won the game. But go watch that breakdown. I highlighted some of the mistakes they made and the nature of them and how it just really, really hurt them. But that interception, it was saved by a fumble the exact next play, but that interception really is the one that did not have to be, like, you didn't have to put the ball in the air at that time. You didn't have to do that. It was really, I don't know. Low scoring game, 20-17, but that 3 points ended up being the difference. South Dakota State won it in overtime on a touchdown run from Amar Johnson. Really good block from their fullback, number 44, might have been number 41. But their fullback made a great block. Amar Johnson followed him into the end zone. But man, I don't know what to think about this South Dakota team. I mean, I do know what to think. They're a good team, and I think they can beat anybody in the FCS. They honestly should have won that game yesterday. I really think they should have won that game yesterday, and that would have given South Dakota State 2 losses. That would have put them on the outside looking in for the Missouri Valley. But man, if you watch that game, you obviously know what I'm talking about. It was a crazy game. I just feel so disappointed for South Dakota State. Or for South Dakota. I feel so disappointed because I have a friend who went to South Dakota, and I told him after they didn't win it in regulation, I said, man, like, it's going to be hard to win this game in overtime. Like, you really had to win that right there. Like, I don't know, it's not looking good for you. And he's like, I know, man. And then after they lost, he was like, man, that's what we always do. Like, obviously I played South Dakota while I was in college. Went crazy on them. Me and my boy Samori went crazy on them. But I haven't watched a ton of them since then, and, they're good. But I don't know. They've never been in that upper echelon. Last year they lost to North Dakota State bad in the playoffs when they had a pretty good team. A lot of the players that they had last year they brought back this year, including one of their best pass rushers in Mikeese Grace, who was a younger player last year. He was a freshman last year. Now he's a sophomore, and he's still playing at a high level. But man, South Dakota State, they just got that winning pedigree. They're back-to-back national champions, and they're not just going to let you come in their house and beat them. Even if they didn't play their best game, they're not just going to let you come in their house and beat them. And they don't beat themselves. So they had no turnovers in this game. Actually, they did. So they did. That's the one thing. They had that fumble. But, South Dakota evened the playing field with throwing an interception. So 1 turnover for each team here. We'll go to the team stats. 1 turnover for each team. They really didn't run the ball too successfully. I know Tice, I think their running back, has been pretty successful running the ball this year. And in this game against South Dakota State, he was not able to get things going. 18 first downs for South Dakota, 19 for South Dakota State. 8 for 16 on third down for South Dakota State, 3 for 12 on third down for South Dakota. That's a little bit of a distinction in there. Total yardage, 286 for South Dakota, 329 for South Dakota State, 193 in the air for South Dakota, 163 in the air for South Dakota State, 21 for 35 and 21 for 28. So a little better completion percentage from South Dakota State. They threw the ball a little less, though, as well. 93 rushing yards for South Dakota, 166 for South Dakota State. And they ran the ball more. They had 43 rushing yard attempts for South Dakota State and only 21 for South Dakota. But they did have a better average, 4.4 yards a carry. Penalties, South Dakota State had more penalties. They had 6 for 58, and South Dakota had 5 for 26. Each had 1 turnover, and then the time of possession, South Dakota State won that. They had 31 and a half minutes of time of possession, and South Dakota had 28 minutes of time of possession. So, I mean, it's pretty... I don't know. Statistically, it seems like they're pretty even. The third down efficiency is something that really stands out to me. The rushing yardage is something that particularly stands out to me. But then the penalties is also something that stands out to me. I don't know. It just, even if they didn't win the game statistically, and even if some of these statistics are weighed in South Dakota State's favor, if you watch the game, you understand that South Dakota had an opportunity to win the game, and they fumbled it away. Literally and figuratively. Well, not even literally, because they didn't fumble it, but they intercepted it away, and they just didn't win it. They didn't win it when they had the opportunity. They had a great opportunity to win the game, and they didn't come away with the dub. I know they're kicking themselves today, and I know the coach is probably watching that film, pointing out some things, but more than anything, you're looking at the film and you're like, man, like, I don't know how we didn't win this game. They should have won this game. There was a drop pass also by the tight end who was wide open in the middle of the field. It was thrown by Tice, and the tight end just dropped it. J.J. Galbraith just dropped it. He made up for it in the next drive, making a couple of big first down catches that ended up being first downs, but that was the one right there. There were so many opportunities, man. They had that first half opportunity with the drop pass by Oh man, go back and watch the breakdown. I keep saying that, I know, but go watch that breakdown and you'll see what I'm talking about. But anybody who watched that game, let me know in the comments right now what you guys thought about that game. What do you guys think about South Dakota? What do you guys think about South Dakota State? Stay tuned into the video because I'm going to talk a little bit later about how the Missouri Valley is shaping up and how I could see it finishing in and how it could potentially finish and how we could potentially have a three-way tie for that Missouri Valley Conference title. But you guys stay tuned in for that. But let me know, guys, what you guys thought about that game in the comments, and I will move on. Okay. Idaho faced off against Eastern Washington at the Kibbe Dome, and Idaho got the victory. They're now 3-2 in conference and 6-3 overall. Eastern Washington moves down to 2-6 and overall and 1-3 in conference. Their 2 victories coming against Sacramento. No, did they beat Sacramento State? Who did Eastern Washington beat? Eastern Washington beat Monmouth the first game of the season, and then they beat they lost to Drake Sela, Nevada, Montana. They beat Sac State. Okay, yeah, so they beat Sac State and they beat Monmouth. But Eastern Washington has not been having a great year. Kagoa Visvaris was 11 for 14, 156 yards, no touchdowns. Jared Taylor was 3 for 4, 17 yards and a touchdown. Tuna Al-Tahir carried the ball 13 times for 67 yards, and then Jared Taylor 13 times for 61 yards. Efton Chisholm had 7 receptions, 114 yards, so a majority of their receiving yards were to Efton Chisholm. That's to be expected. He is up to a whopping 864 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns, 76 receptions. So I expect him to be a first-team all-conference receiver. He's probably going to lead the conference. He's probably going to be one of the top receivers in the country, honestly. I hope he leads the country in receiving yards. I'm pretty sure he's still leading the country in receptions. He had 15 a week ago, so he's really running away with the receiving statistics this year. Hopefully he has a really good pro day, really good. Maybe he gets invited to some of those all-star games, Senior Bowl maybe. Maybe I definitely see him getting a Shrine Bowl or NFLPA invite, but he's having a really good year, and hopefully he's able to take that and parlay it into a really, really good NFL career. But he's a great receiver. He's probably the best receiver in the Big Sky Conference. Not probably. He's the best receiver in the Big Ten Conference right now. He's running away with the statistics. It's hard to argue with that. Jack Lane returned after breaking his collarbone in week 1. This was week 9, so it's been around that 8-week mark. I mean, that's really the rehab time. When I broke my collarbone, the rehab time was about 8 weeks. So it's been about 8 weeks since he broke his collarbone, and he's back, and he played decently well. He was 17 for 28, 235 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Their running back, Deshaun Buchanan, had 8 carries, 116 yards, 2 touchdowns. That is, let me look at these statistics. That is an average of 14 yards a carry. It was really good to see Jack Lane back. That's something that I think they were really missing this year. Not that Jack Wagner, I didn't think very highly of Jack Wagner. I didn't think he was playing very well towards the back half of his. I mean, anytime he was playing, I thought I was very high on him at the beginning of the year when I first saw him. I thought he was playing well. But as I kept having a bigger sample size of his games, it didn't look as good as I thought it did at the beginning. He didn't play terrible. I mean, they're still 6-3 with a chance to make the playoffs, and they got a decent defense. But they needed Jack Lane. Jack Lane was a starter for a reason. Jack Wagner and Nick Yokesvek both had the same opportunity Jack Lane's been there longer. Well, not longer than Jack Wagner. Jack Wagner and Jack Lane have both been there at the same amount of time. And if Jack Wagner was better than Jack Lane, he would have been the starter. He wasn't. So that's one thing I pointed to when I thought of Jack Lane. He was a starter for a reason, and they were missing him. Their leading receiver is Jordan Dwyer with 4 receptions for 78 yards and a touchdown. And then Mark Hamper had 3 receptions for 61 yards, no touchdowns. His long was 20.3. And I didn't know this. Mark Hamper is averaging 21 yards a reception, 26 catches, 548 yards, and a touchdown. Mark Hamper is having an amazing year. He's only got one 100-yard receiving game. He had 4 for 103. He might slip into that all-conference talk. Jordan Dwyer, on the other hand, has 40 receptions for 560 yards, 6 touchdowns. So he's got more receptions than Mark Hamper, but he also only has one 100-yard receiving game. So those Idaho receivers are decent. They're pretty good. Some of the better receivers in the league. But yeah, I mean, it was a good game. It was a good game to watch. Points were being put up, 38 points for Idaho and 28 points for Eastern Washington. It seemed like for a minute Eastern Washington might be able to slip in there and get a victory, but overall, Idaho was able to come out with the victory. That Eastern Washington defense, I don't want to keep harping on them, man. I hate that I have to talk about them every time I talk about this team, but I really thought they were going to be good, and that was the one distinction for Eastern Washington when I said if Eastern Washington's defense can come up this year, they're going to be good. and their defense has not come through this year, and they have not been good. And it's really difficult for me to see because, I think highly of that Eastern Washington squad. I think highly of some of the players on the Eastern Washington team. But, you got to play defense. You got to play defense if you want to win, and they haven't done that at all, and you've seen that they haven't been able to win. But, did you guys watch this Eastern Washington game, Idaho game? What do you guys think about Jack Lane being back? Do you guys think Jack Lane... Oh, yeah. I think Jack Lane makes a difference for Idaho. I think with Jack Lane coming back, I think this Idaho team can use the momentum they gained from him being back and take it into the playoffs and maybe go on a playoff run. Maybe if their defense can get back. I mean, I think obviously Eastern Washington is a different beast. But let's see what their defense has given up. They gave up 29 to Cal Poly, not great. They gave up 38 to Montana State, not great. They gave up 17 to Arizona. They gave up 28 to UC Davis. They gave up 24 to Abilene Christian. They gave up 13 to Albany. They gave up 13 to Wyoming, and they gave up 24 to Oregon. So one of the better defenses in the Big Sky Conference, but they are giving up, close to probably their average is probably around 24 points is what they're probably averaging around, maybe a little lower than that, but not the best, but better for the Big Sky Conference. I don't know. We'll see. I think they got a good pass rush, but I don't know anything else. Tommy McCormick, I know, had a really good game. He was flying around yesterday, but we'll see. I think Jack Lane gives them a spark, but we'll see how much of a spark he gives them. They put up 40 points this week. We'll see. Let's see how many points. What's the most points they've put up this year? This might be the most points they've put up this year. Outside of that Albany game, who's not very good, this is the most points they've put up this year, so 38. Last week they put up 34. Jack Lane did not play, but I know he was in pads. So it's good to see Jack Lane back. Good to see him put up some points. Good to see him put those numbers up. He did take some hits, so it's good to see him get hit and be able to stay healthy. But we'll see if he makes a difference. It was obviously his first game back, and he played well, but we'll see. We'll see what they're able to do. You guys let me know down below what you guys thought about this Idaho Eastern Washington game, and I will move on.
The Treasure State University of Montana football is a way of life. Lithia Ford has long been a proud sponsor of Grizz football, and Lithia Ford of Missoula is thrilled to have several of the best Montana football seniors driving the best trucks in Montana. Aspen Sound is the premier car audio and accessory shop in Montana. Aspen Sound makes sure the boys are riding in style with tinted windows and state-of-the-art stereo systems. There's always a party in Montana. Whether you're going to a concert, a wedding, or a football game, the Montana Party Bus will get you there. Skyline Sports and ESPN MT cover the Big Sky with more depth than anyone. Check out SkylineSportsMT.com and tune in to Nuanez Now on 102.9 ESPN Missoula every day. My Montana Roots and Wear Your Roots clothing is your go-to spot for the most unique and comfortable lifestyle clothing you'll find anywhere. And get your custom t-shirts to support your favorite player. From 5 local businesses who love Montana, best of luck to the Grizz as they pursue another Big Sky Conference championship.
Okay. The third game that was played in the Big Sky Conference this weekend was Idaho State versus Sac State. And now Sac State, man, they have they fooled me, man, because I thought they were going to be really good when the season started, and they just have not been that, man. They have not been that at all, and Idaho State has been, better. I mean, they're in and this is what Coulter talked about, is like, if Idaho State were to beat Portland State, that would show that they are in the upper, like the middle tier of Big Sky teams, because there's an upper tier of Big Sky teams. That's Montana State, UC Davis, Montana, and I would probably put Idaho in there. And then there's a middle tier. That middle tier is like Weber State, Idaho State, thought it was Sac State. I mean, there's a middle tier. So let me look at this. So Montana State, UC Davis, Montana, Idaho are on that upper tier. Maybe even you can slide, no. So then you got the middle tier, which is Northern Arizona, Weber State. Is Idaho in there? Idaho State, in there? Maybe. They seem to have put themselves in that middle tier. And then there's a low tier. That's Northern Colorado, Portland State, Sac State this year, honestly, Eastern Washington, and Cal Poly. All the lower tier teams. But there's tiers in the Big Sky Conference. And Coulter was talking about is Idaho State in that middle tier and in that bottom tier. Well, they lost to Portland State, which really seemed to put them in that bottom tier. But then they go and beat Sac State. But is there really 2 tiers in the Big Sky Conference? Is there the upper tier and the bottom tier? I don't know. It kind of seems like that. Like the upper tier is Montana State, UC Davis, Northern Montana, and Idaho. And then everything else is below. But I don't know. Every team, there's only 3 teams who are over 500 in the Big Sky, and that's Montana State, UC Davis, Montana, and Idaho. Everybody else is 500 or below. And dang, Idaho State's already played 9 games this year. They got to be having a bye coming up very soon. I would probably guess their bye is probably this week. Yeah, because they play on the 9th, which is not this week, but the next week. So, yeah, they're finally getting their bye. I know that is a much-needed bye for those guys. They played a ton of football already. 9 games is absolutely crazy. Idaho has also played 9 games, so got to believe they're probably on their bye this week as well. But it was a really good game, back-and-forth game. Kobe Tracy, the quarterback for Idaho State, was 23 for 38, 290 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Their run game was decent. They had 134 rushing yards. Their quarterback their running back, Donald Austin, had 4 carries for 34 yards. They only had 32 rushes. Sac State was really successful on the ground. But Christian Fredrickson for Idaho State had 10 receptions, 160 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And then Jeff Weimer had 6 receptions for 95 yards and a touchdown. So really airing the ball out right there. Jeff Weimer has 49 receptions, 736 yards, and 6 touchdowns on the season. So he's having a really, really good year. Let me see what Christian Fredrickson has. 52 receptions, 734 yards, and 7 touchdowns. So also having a really good year. These Idaho State receivers are really tearing it up this year. But, on the other side of things, Sac State. Carson Conklin was 24 of 40 for 270 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. They really tore it up on the ground. Curon Borders had 18 carries, 145 yards, no touchdowns. And then Elijah Tao Tolliver, 11 carries, 100 yards. 11 carries, 100 yards, and a touchdown. So he had a really, really good game. He's really been having a good year. He's up to like 830 rushing yards in that top tier of running backs. It's really a running back league in the Big Sky Conference. You got Eli Gilman, you got Scott Trey Humphrey, you got Land Larison, who's really a different tier than all of those other guys because he can catch out of the backfield really, really well, and he can run the ball at a high level. And then you got Elijah Tao Tolliver. Oh, and I didn't even mention. So, no, it's a running back league. You got Scott Trey Humphrey, Land Larison, Damon Bankston, who's like in the top 10 in rushing in the country. What did I say? Scott Trey Humphrey, Land Larison, Damon Bankston, Eli Gilman, Elijah Tao Tolliver. I mean, there's some really, really good running backs in the Big Sky Conference, and it is a running back league. You got some receivers. They're not on the better teams. Any team that has a good running, I can't even say that. But the number 1 team, Montana State, they have a really good running back, Scott Trey Humphrey. The number 2 team in the Big Sky Conference is UC Davis. They have a really good running back, Land Larison. They got a really good offensive player. Their quarterback is really good too. I guess he's being watched for Walter Payton as well. He's really tore it up passing the ball this year. Number 3, Eli Gilman. They're the number 3 team in the Big Sky Conference. He's a really good running back. And then so on and so forth. But some really good running backs in the league. It's really good to see these running backs have a really good year. Damon Bankston obviously was on a bye this past week. The majority of the Big Sky Conference was on a bye this week. But they get to sit down and rest up a little bit. But we're going to see a ton of play next week. But, this Idaho State game, it went into overtime. Sac State, it was really back and forth. They went into overtime. Sac State was able to tie it up with a field goal in the 4th quarter. And then, they get the ball first and they kick the field goal. They're trying to hold Idaho State. Idaho State, I was actually showing Coulter. I was shooting a video trying to show Coulter because he wanted to know how to do the multicast on ESPN. And I was trying to show him how to do that because he's always like, he mentioned how I watch so much football on a Saturday and I just always have so many games up because I'm always texting him. Like, I'll text him about, such and such just did this. Like, it'll be like a Southern SoCon team. I'll be like, South Dakota just did this against South Dakota State. It'll be like a Missouri Valley team. And they'll be like, Sac State just did this. And it'll be a Big Sky team. So I'm always watching so many conferences during a Saturday that he was wondering how I did that and how I'm always tapped in. Because I had the South Dakota versus South Dakota State game on my iPad. And then on the multicast on the TV, I had 4 other games across the FCS and a few FBS games on the TV as well. So I'm always just watching so many games because sometimes they go into commercial and I hate commercials. I want to watch football all the time, 24/7. So I'm not watching commercials. I'm watching football, and I'll change through games, or sometimes I'll have the 4 up and I'll just see because sometimes they're playing at the same time. So that's how I do it on Saturdays. I know a ton of people who do it like that. That is the way to watch football on football Sundays and Saturdays. So make sure you get that multicast going. If you don't know how to do it, comment down below. I'll let you know how to do the multicast. But multicast is elite. But I was showing Coulter how to put the multicast up on his TV. And as I was doing that, Idaho State threw the game-winning touchdown, and they won in overtime 30-27. It was a really, really good game. They were able to throw the ball all over the place. I can't remember who caught that touchdown pass. I think it was Jeff Weimer who caught that touchdown pass on a corner route in the corner of the end zone. I can actually look at the play-by-play here, and I can tell you exactly who caught that touchdown pass. And it's a fumble. It was at end of half. So this is touchdown. Scoring summary. First quarter, 4th quarter. Jeff Weimer, 10-yard pass from Kobe Tracy on a corner route. Just a great ball from the quarterback. Just a great touchdown from Jeff Weimer. Idaho State gets the victory. Are they in that mid-tier in the Big Sky Conference? I don't know. You guys can let me know in the comments. But let me know what you guys think about this Idaho State team. What do you guys think about the Sac State team? I thought Sac State would be much better. I know in the preseason poll, they were, I think, top 15, maybe top 20. But they were ranked for sure. And I had them ranked early on in the season. I didn't know how to judge their non-conference schedule. But I think we're getting a good gauge of who they are now. They're not very good. They haven't been playing very good football. I don't know if they're missing Caden Bennett because I don't think their defense is very good. Their defensive stats looked good early on in the season, but it's just as you go further on in the season, you get more of a sample size of who these teams are. They let 48 go up on them against Weber State last week. Eastern Washington put 35 up on them. Northern Arizona put 34 up on them. They beat Texas A&M Commerce. They beat Nichols. They lost to Fresno State but put 30 up, and then they lost to San Jose State but put up 24. So you thought early on when they were playing these FBS teams decently close, you thought, oh, this might be a pretty good team, and then they were beating up on Texas A&M Commerce and Nichols, so you're like, oh, they're probably going to be a pretty good team. And then we get into conference play. First conference game, they lose to Northern Arizona. Next conference game, they lose to Eastern Washington. Weber State puts up 48 on them, and then Idaho State beats them. So they're not having a good year. They're 3-5. They're looking for some answers. I know, I can't remember. I'm blanking on their head coach's name right now. Andy Thompson. Coach Thompson is struggling right now. I know the coach who was there previously left for Stanford, and they beat Stanford last year. But now it's not looking good for Sac State. So we'll see what they're able to do. They were a playoff team last year. They're definitely not going to be a playoff team this year. And, they're going to be looking for some answers. I know they're looking to potentially transition and get an invite to the Pac-12. They've been raising a ton of money lately trying to get that Pac-12 invite. So we'll see if they're able to come up with that. But currently, right now, they're in the Big Sky, and they're one of the worst Big Sky teams currently. So we will see what they're able to do. You guys let me know in the comments what you guys think about Sac State and Idaho State, and I will move on. Okay, let's take a look at my Big Sky poll after Week 9. Where do I have the Big Sky teams ranked after Week 9? I've been doing a poll every week of where I rank the Big Sky teams. It's been pretty fluid. It's been fluid for sure, but it's been pretty consistent over the last few weeks. I've had, most of the time the same teams have been towards the top, but there was a little bit of movement this week with what happened with Sac State, what happened with Idaho State, what happened with Idaho, but it's pretty consistent. So at 1, I got Montana State. At 2, I got UC Davis. At 3, I got Montana. At 4, I got Idaho. At 5, I got Northern Arizona. At 6, we got Weber State. At 7, we got Idaho State. At 8, we got Eastern Washington. At 9, we got Sacramento State. At 10, we got Portland State. At 11, we got Northern Colorado. And at 12, we got Cal Poly. So Eastern Washington moved up a little bit. Sacramento State moved down. Weber State moved up just by way of not losing anything. I honestly think I should have switched Weber State and Idaho State. Idaho State should honestly be at 7. Weber State should be at 6. Idaho State should be at 6. Weber State should be at 7. Eastern Washington should stay at 8 because they beat Sac State. Sac State just lost to Idaho State, so they can't be above them. Portland State didn't play, but they're one of the worst teams in the conference. Northern Colorado lost, and then Cal Poly didn't play, but they're one of the worst teams in the conference too. So, but really you want to look at that top 5. It's Montana State, UC Davis, Montana, Idaho, and Northern Arizona. Could Northern Arizona potentially sneak into the playoffs? I don't know if I would go that far, but Northern Arizona currently is 4-4, I believe. Yeah, they're 4-4, 2-2 in conference. If they win out, we're playing 12 games. They're playing 12 games this year. So if they win out and go 8-4, I think that could potentially, they had a then ranked win against Sac State. I don't know if they're a playoff team. We'll have to see how the rest of the FCS ends up to see if Northern Arizona is a playoff team. But, they're sitting currently at 4-4. So not one of the worst teams in the Big Sky Conference, but not one of the best. That's why I mentioned, there's literally a tier in the Big Sky that there's teams that are separated. Idaho is the last team in that first tier, even though they have 2 losses in the conference, and then the rest are below. So we will see how it works out. But my poll, once again, 1 is Montana State, 2 is UC Davis, 3 is Montana, 4 is Idaho, 5 is Northern Arizona, 6 is Weber State, 7 is Idaho State, 8 is Eastern Washington, 9 is Sac State, 10 is Portland State, 11 is Northern Colorado, and 12 is Cal Poly. You guys let me know in the comments what you think about my poll. Is it bogus or is it elite? You guys let me know. It's been pretty consistent towards the top, but we'll see. I will let you guys comment on that, and I will move on. Okay, I got some updated numbers, some defensive numbers this week on my top Big Sky performances of Week 9. I know the last couple of weeks I haven't been able to get some of the defensive performances, but who would have known the week that there was only 3 defensive games? I will go through the stat sheets and look at who had good defensive games. So I'm going to tell you who I think had the best defensive game this week and who I think had the worst defensive, what am I talking about? I'm going to talk about my top performances of the Big Sky from this past weekend. 1, I got Christian Fredrickson of Idaho State. 10 receptions, 163 yards, 2 touchdowns, an average of 16.3 yards a catch. He had a really good game. He's close to 800 yards on the season. I think he's like 750, but he's having a really good season. One of the taller receivers in the conference. He's like 6'3", 6'4", 200 pounds. Really good receiver. I remember seeing him last year when they came to Montana. I noticed him when I was doing the breakdown. I was like, who is that guy? Really shined. They had a really good receiver last year that he left and went to Fresno State, but yeah, he's having a pretty good season. Another receiver on their team, Jeff Weimer, is having a good season as well. Idaho State throws it all over the yard, so it's to be expected that they're going to have some receivers with a lot of receiving yardage. But then you also have Efton Chisholm in the conference, who's having a really good season as well. So Christian Fredrickson is, keep an eye out. He's probably going to be an all-conference receiver, first or second team all-conference receiver. He's having a really good year. At number 2, I got Hayden Harris of Montana. He had 4 tackles and 2.5 tackles for loss. So I was probably reaching for this one, honestly, but Hayden Harris has been having a really good year. He's now up to 12 tackles for loss on the season. He is a pick. He is a guy to keep an eye on for Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year. Him and Keyshawn James Newby are probably my 2 top picks right now for Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year. I haven't really noticed anybody else who could really garner enough attention or enough statistics to get that. The only reason a lot of the Montana State guys or like a Brody Grebe isn't in the running for that right now is because they haven't played a ton of football in the second half. They've only played first half of games. They've been out a lot. They haven't played full games yet. So the only full game those guys have probably played is New Mexico. The rest of those games, Idaho, they didn't play. They haven't played any full game yet besides New Mexico. So that's probably the one reason why you can't have those guys up there. But Hayden Harris had a good game yesterday. 4 total tackles. I think 2 of those were solo. Maybe 2.5. 2 though, I think, but 2.5 tackles for loss. Next is Derek Ganter from Eastern Washington. He had 15 total tackles, 8 of them being solo. So no other statistics outside of the tackles, but he had a really good tackling game. 15 total tackles is really good. That means he was flying around. Even though it was in a loss for them, he had a good game. Next is Tommy McCormick of Idaho. 18 total tackles, only 5 solo, but really flying around, making a difference. Obviously, like I mentioned, or not like I mentioned, but that was in a victory for them. But 18 total tackles is a ton of tackles. He's having a really good year. I know he's been flying around. I know he's been doing the thing defensively for them. That's a guy who's going to PA school, I believe, or he wants to be a doctor. That guy, I asked him at the Big Sky at the Big Sky Media Day about, his future plans after his senior year. And he was like, I've already taken the MCAT. I'm already set up to go to medical school. And like that dude is dialed in. I love to see that. He's really locked in on what he wants to do and what he wants his career to look like. So, good for Tommy McCormick, but he had a really good game on Saturday. Last, but certainly not least, we only got 5 players on this list this week. Obviously, there was only 3 games, 6 teams playing. So not a ton of statistics to look at, but we got Will Liotta, who totally tore up the stat sheet. 6 total tackles, 3 solo, 1.5 tackles for loss, an interception, and 2 pass breakups. So absolutely all over the field, making plays in the pass game, making plays on in the backfield, making tackles. I mean, he's been flying around. He's one of the better linebackers in the Big Sky Conference. Obviously, on a lackluster Sac State team this year, but he individually is having a good year, so it's good to see good statistics. But let me know if I missed any Big Sky top performances. I don't think I did. I did a really good job of sweeping the stats and seeing who played well and who didn't play well. You guys let me know if you guys think anybody had a good game that I'm missing out on, but I don't think I did. So let me know in the comments what you guys think, and I will move on. Okay, this is one of the first times I'm going to do this, and I'm going to try to do this every week until the end of the season. But I want to go around the FCS and look at what's going on in conferences. I want to look at some of the standings, look at how teams are shaping up, and look how things are looking in different conferences around the FCS. So currently, here's where the standings are with each conference in the Big Sky around the FCS. Leading the Big Sky Conference, you got Montana State. They're undefeated. You got UC Davis close behind them. You have What is that? Okay. You have in the Big South OVC, you have Southeast Missouri State at 8-1, 5-0 in their conference. So they're looking like they're going to win that conference. Obviously, you got to play all the games, so it's going to be up until the end that they're going to play. But we'll see. SEMO has been a really good team. They're ranked in the top 10 currently right now, as is Montana State and UC Davis. And the CAA, you got Rhode Island, who's undefeated at 7-1 in conference play. You also have Richmond, who won a piece. I believe they won a piece of the... Was it Richmond? I think Richmond had won a piece of the CAA last year. They're 4-0 in conference, 6-2 overall. And you have Delaware, who's not eligible for the playoffs, but they're 7-1. They're moving up to that. I think they're going to Conference USA, but they're 4-1 in conference, 7-1 overall. They're not eligible to make the playoffs. And then you got Villanova, who's 6-2. 6-2 overall, 3-1 in conference. So the CAA is super huge. All the teams can't play each other, but you got another Stony Brook who's also in there, who's 6-2 overall, 3-1 in conference. So we'll see how the CAA shapes up. But Rhode Island and Richmond are the two top teams in that conference currently. You got FCS Dependence and Merrimack and Sacred Heart. Neither of them are having good years, 4-4 and 4-5. So we're just gonna move on. Ivy League, who's not playoff eligible, but you got Dartmouth, who's 6-0, and they're really head and shoulders above the rest of the. Well, you got Harvard, who's 5-1, 2-1 in conference, and then 4-2 Columbia, who's 2-1 in conference. But really, it's Dartmouth right now. Dartmouth Big Green. Didn't know they were Big Green. You got the MEAC conference, which is HBC. You got 6-2 North Carolina Central Eagles, who made the playoffs last year, but got beat up by, I think it was Richmond who beat them in the playoffs last year. They're 2-0 in conference. 6-2 overall right now. You got Missouri Valley Football Conference, which is North Dakota State Bison at 5-0 and 8-1 in conference, and you got you got Missouri State, who are 4-0 and 6-2 in conference. Now, I don't think Missouri State can make the playoffs because they're transitioning to FBS, but North Dakota State certainly can. South Dakota State definitely can, and South Dakota certainly can. So South Dakota State currently is 3-1 in conference right now. And they finished the season with Murray State next week. They should win that. They got North Dakota. They should win that, but we don't know. They got Southern Illinois, and they got Missouri State. So South Dakota State could essentially win a piece of the Big Sky Conference, of the Missouri Valley Conference title. And then North Dakota State, who's ahead of everybody right now, could win a piece of it too. So take a look at this. North Dakota State has Northern Iowa. They should win that. They have Missouri State. That could be a good game. And then they have South Dakota. So imagine this. North Dakota State's currently undefeated in the Missouri Valley. Say they lose to South Dakota. South Dakota finishes the season with Indiana State, North Dakota, and North Dakota State. So if they beat North Dakota State, they get a piece of the Big Sky of the Missouri Valley title. If North Dakota State wins, so I guess, does it matter? Okay, So head-to-heads will matter, I think. I don't know how the Missouri Valley works. I haven't done a ton of research and like I haven't covered the Missouri Valley a ton. But so since North Dakota State would have over the South Dakota State, but they're all 4-1. They're all going to be 7-1. So North Dakota State would have the head-to-head over South Dakota State. So that would mean that North Dakota State would be over them. But if South Dakota beats them, they have the head-to-head over North Dakota State. But South Dakota State beats South Dakota, so they would have the head-to-head. So they would all have to get a share of it. So I think I'm on the right path with saying this, but I think South Dakota State, South Dakota, and North Dakota State could all get a share of the Missouri Valley Conference title if South Dakota beats North Dakota State and wins every other game, and if South Dakota State wins out and North Dakota State wins out, besides losing to South Dakota. I think there could be a three-way tie for the Missouri Valley Football Conference title. Somebody who covers the Missouri Valley Football Conference title or follows it as a fan, let me know in the comments what you think about that. But I think there could be a three-way tie for the Missouri Valley Football Conference title. And that really should be the title of this video. Could there be a three-way tie for the Missouri Valley Football Conference title? Do you guys know? I don't know. I think there could be based on how things are shaping up, but I don't know enough about the Missouri Valley to say yes or no. But I think there could be. If they all end up at 7-1, they would all have to get a share of the title, right? Which would be tough because North Dakota State and South Dakota would play the last game of the Missouri Valley, which is obviously when they're going to hand out the trophy. So say that, and this would be funny, say that South Dakota beats North Dakota State and they're rolling the trophy out there. Do they give a trophy to both teams, even the losing team? So they're going to celebrate. They're like, we're lost, but we still won the Missouri Valley title. I don't know. North Dakota State has beat up on South Dakota in the past, and I know South Dakota got beat up in the playoffs by them, but they beat them in the regular season last year, but they got beat up in the playoffs. So I don't know what to think about that. They obviously could win. I think it's going to be a good game. It's going to be a game I'm going to have my eyes on. I'm definitely going to break that game down. But I don't know. We'll see. There's going to be some good games that last week because I'm going to break that game down. And I'm also going to break down the Cat Grizz game, which is going to be a really, really good game to break down. And then I don't know. But the last week of the season is going to be very exciting because then also I might break down Tarleton versus UCA, who's playing in the UAC conference. There's going to be some good football down the stretch of this conference season, down the stretch of this FCS season. But I think there could be a tie for the Missouri Valley Conference title based on what I'm seeing and based on how it seems things are finishing. I think there could be a three-way tie. But another big thing to end this season is Missouri State, man. Missouri State has been hanging around. They're 6-2. They beat some really good teams. They beat a ranked Illinois State when they were ranked. They beat them up 41-7. They beat Youngstown State, who just beat North Dakota 38-31. They beat UT Martin, who's in that Big South OVC conference. Lindenwood, they beat them. They played Ball State close. I thought they were going to beat Ball State, but they lost to Montana 29-24, which really ends up being a really good win for Montana when you look back on it. When you look back on it now, that game really ends up being a really strong win for Montana. I remember a lot of people didn't think very highly of that game being close, but now when you look back on it, Montana winning that game at home by 5 looks really good on Montana. Now, I don't know what they will use that, if they will use that in order to give Montana some better playoff standing or some better playoff seeding based on them winning that game. But I don't know if Missouri State's ranked. I don't know if they can be ranked. I don't know if they will rank them. I don't know how all of that works. I know it was a good win for Montana, though. They got Southern Illinois next week. Then they got Murray State. Then they got North Dakota State and South Dakota State. So there's going to be some good games in this Missouri Valley. I might also break down that South Dakota State and Missouri State game. I know that's a lot of work on me, but there's some really good games being played in that last week of the season. I want to get all this content out for you guys because that's really good. That's really good football being played. But the Missouri Valley is very interesting right now. Obviously, North Dakota State's undefeated. Missouri State also is undefeated, so everybody else is on the outside looking in until those teams. Well, I think Missouri State can still win the Missouri Valley, but until those teams lose, everybody else is on the outside looking in. Next, we go to the NEC conference. You got Robert Morris, who's 5-3 overall, 4-0 in the NEC, and then you got Duquesne, who's 3-0 in conference and 5-2 overall. So I don't think the NEC gets 2 playoff teams, but obviously I think those teams will end up having to play each other. We got Robert Morris right now. They play Merrimack, and then they play Duquesne, so that's really going to probably decide the NEC when those 2 teams play. We will see who comes out with that. I know Robert Morris has been having a pretty good season, but I know Duquesne is the defending NEC champion, so they will have some words for Robert Morris. They're not just going to let him march in, and that game is going to be played in Duquesne, so they're not just going to, or at Duquesne, they're not just going to let them walk in and win that game. Obviously, every game is played on the turf, so we will see. We will definitely see. I would pick Duquesne in that game just because they're the defending NEC champions, but I don't think very highly of the NEC in general, so we will see from that standpoint. We will see. Next, you have the Patriot League. Holy Cross is currently, man, the Patriot League is not having a good year, man. You got Holy Cross, who's 3-0 in Patriot League standings, but they are 4-5 in the Patriot League. And I got to call it when I see it. I mentioned that I thought Lafayette was going to win the Patriot League. I thought they were going to run away with it. I think very highly of Jamar Curtis. I don't think Jamar Curtis is even having a good year this year. That was one player that I really had my eye on. I really wanted him to have a good year. They actually just played Holy Cross and Lafayette. Holy Cross won 34-28. Not a great game by Lafayette. They won the Patriot League last year, went to the playoffs and almost beat Delaware, but they let Delaware come back. Lafayette really fumbled that game away, but Jamar Curtis has 149 carries, 726 yards, 9 touchdowns this year. Not anything of what he was last year. Still a good player, still a young player, so he still has time to improve. But I thought they were going to be better this year, but Holy Cross is undefeated. But the reason I said the Patriot League is weird is because Holy Cross is 4-5. But they're 3-0 in conference play, so they've lost a lot of non-conference games. But I think they only play 6 conference games in that conference. Yeah, because they're playing 12 this year, so they're 1-6 in non-conference games. In conference games, they're 3-0. And you got Georgetown, who's 2-1 in conference and 5-3 overall. So somebody out of that conference is going to make the playoffs. I don't know who that's going to be, but Holy Cross and Georgetown finished the season. So once again, another good game to finish the season. All of these games and all of these conferences come down to the last game. I don't know how they do it, the FCS schedule makers or each conference schedule makers, but they always know that it's just like in the Big Sky Conference. Montana and Montana State usually has big standings on rankings, on seedings, and on who's going to win that Big Sky Conference title. Like it was last year. The winner of that game was going to win the Big Sky. Montana came out victorious with that, so they won the Big Sky. But, man, it's going to be a good finish to the FCS season, like I've mentioned. Next, you got the Pioneer League. Drake seems to be running away with the Pioneer League, but St. Thomas, like I mentioned, I knew they'd be right there. I said they'd be right there. St. Thomas and Drake are 4-0 in the Pioneer League. Drake is 5-1 overall, and St. Thomas is 5-3 overall. Morehead State is 3-1, 5-3 overall. I think they already lost to Drake, so that kind of takes them really out of that running unless they're able to no, they haven't played yet. So Morehead State and Drake play in the second to last week, and then Drake and St. Thomas play in the third to last week. So they play November 9th, and then Morehead and Drake play November 16th. So some more good games to finish the season. Not the last week of the season. Drake finishes with Stetson, who's 2-5, but that Pioneer League is also shaping up. They probably only get one playoff team in there, but St. Thomas could win. I mentioned in the offseason that I thought St. Thomas was right there last year. I think they could have an opportunity to win it this year. We will see, though. They're 5-3 overall. Drake is 5-1 overall. Morehead is 5-3 overall as well. But Morehead, if it ain't the Pioneer League, none of these teams really compete outside of the Pioneer League. So that's the tough thing about these leagues. They obviously get a bid when they win, but they don't play strong. They don't play good football outside of their conference. They get beat up by everybody else. Now, Drake beat Eastern Washington in overtime. They had a pretty good offensive game there. I thought that was a good win for them. They've won 4 in a row. St. Thomas has won 4 in a row, and Morehead has won 2 in a row. So I'm not trying to discount them or anything, but I don't think very highly of that conference. They don't play good football. It's better than the NEC, but I don't think very highly of them outside of their conference, and that's been shown in the playoffs. So that's all I got to say about that. In the SoCon, you got Mercer, who beat Western Carolina yesterday. Now, Western Carolina was actually initially winning that game, I believe, and then Mercer came back to win 44-34. That was a good game being played in the SoCon conference. I thought Western Carolina was going to win that conference. And right now you have Chattanooga, UT Chattanooga, who's 4-1, and then you got Mercer, who's 4-1. Mercer lost a week ago to I think it was Sanford. Yeah, they lost to Sanford 55-35. So I don't know, just a weird dropped game from them right there, because Sanford's 2-2 in conference. They're 3-4 overall. Mercer is 7-1 overall. They were undefeated before losing to Sanford. And then you got UT Chattanooga, who's 5-3 overall. East Tennessee State's 5-3 and 3-1 in conference. So still a few teams in there who could potentially win that conference title in the Southern Conference. But yeah, shaping up to be a good race there. I would probably pick Mercer right now to win that. Furman, who won that last year, is 2-5. They lost a ton of talent. Western Carolina's 4-4, but 3-1. So they still, nobody is out of the running for that SoCon conference either. Now, I don't know if they share the title or how that works in that conference. Obviously, head-to-heads probably play a part in that as well. But we will see how that ends up as well, because there's a bunch of teams with one loss in that conference, and there's a few weeks to go in the season. In the Southland Conference, you got Incarnate Word, who's undefeated in Southland play. They just won yesterday against, I think it was Sela, who they played yesterday. They beat them 34-31. No overtime there, but it was a good game from Incarnate Word. They're having a pretty decent season. They have dropped a game to Southern Illinois, which is probably a bad loss for them at this point. Yeah, now, because Southern Illinois is not super good. And then they lost to South Dakota State. They played them strong at the beginning, but it ended up losing that game when it came down to it. But they're 6-2 overall, 3-0 in conference. Sela, who they just beat yesterday, is 3-1 and 4-5 overall. So I really see Incarnate Word, Stephen F. Austin, who's got 2 conference losses, but they're 5-3 overall. They're probably going to get one playoff team out of that Southland Conference, and it's probably going to be Incarnate Word if they are able to run the table and finish the season off strong. But yeah, I see them winning the conference. I see them getting that playoff bid, but we will see. That's where the Southland Conference is. I don't really see too much out of that conference outside of there. But then you got the SWAC, which has Jackson State at 4-0, 6-2 overall. None of these teams make the playoffs, so I'm really going to just go past the SWAC. No offense to any of you HBCU people, but I'm just going to move past the SWAC right now because they don't play in the playoffs. The United Athletic Conference. I talked about them in the offseason. You got Tarleton State, who's 7-1 right now overall, 4-0 in conference play. And then you got Abilene Christian, who's 5-3, 4-1 in conference. And you got Central Arkansas, who's 6-2 and 3-1 in conference. I think that last game of the season, Central Arkansas and Tarleton State could both potentially get in the playoffs, and maybe Abilene Christian. I think the UAC could potentially get 2 playoff teams. This conference is looking better and better. Tarleton is obviously head and shoulders right now. Not even head and shoulders, but they're leading the conference right now. We'll see what their schedule finishes up as. They probably have a tough finish to the schedule. They have Eastern Kentucky next week. They got West Georgia. Then they got Abilene Christian and Central Arkansas. So the last 2 weeks for Tarleton are going to be the 2 tough weeks for them. We will see how they finish off the season. But, man, I predicted at the beginning of the season that I thought Tarleton and Central Arkansas to end the season was going to be for the conference title, and I still think that. I still think they have the two best running backs, Kayvon Britton I think Tarleton State is the one that has Kayvon Britton. I believe that's Kayvon Britton's team. Yeah, Kayvon Britton is on Tarleton State, and then you got Shunderick Powell on Central Arkansas. Two best running backs in the FCS football right now. Two of the top running backs in FCS football. Central Arkansas. I think they might have been on a bye this week, but yeah, Shunderick Powell has 1,100 rushing yards, and Kayvon Britton has about 1,200. Two really, really good running backs. They are tearing it up. Both of them probably should be up for the Walter Payton Award this year. They probably are. I don't know the last time a running back won that award, but they should be up for the Walter Payton. I know Tommy Malotte's up for that as well. I also know Cam Miller's up for that. I also know Miles Hastings' name has been floated out there, but I probably think Tommy Malotte and Cam Miller are probably leading in the standings for that. There's no standings for that, but if anybody who votes on that, they probably have Cam Miller and Tommy Malotte at the top of their mind for that award right now. But I think Shunderick Powell and Kayvon Britton can be up there, but UAC is shaping up pretty well. I think they could potentially get 2 playoff teams. I mean, I don't know too much about the United Athletic Conference. I don't know how much about how the competition is weighted there, but I think they could get 2 playoff teams. They're going to get a seeded team with whoever wins that conference, and then I think whoever is left could probably potentially win that. But you guys let me know what you guys think about all of this, the updated standings with all of the FCS football being played right now. Let me know what you guys think about some of these teams. Let me know what you guys think about my MVFC prediction about potentially that title being shared 3 ways. You guys let me know what you think about that. Can that happen? Let me know if you guys think that can happen. Have you guys ever seen that happen? Has it been shared before? Can it be shared? Does the head-to-head play take a place in that? Because if it's head-to-head, if it shapes out how I predict it to shake out or how I think it could shape out, each team could have a win over one of the teams. So how do you give it to one team over the other when each team, USD could potentially beat North Dakota State. North Dakota State could have potentially beat South Dakota State, and South Dakota State could have already beat South Dakota. So it could be it has to be shared if each team has beat one of the teams that has finished 7-1. So you guys let me know how you think about the updated FCS standings. What do you guys think about some of these top teams shaping up in the conferences? And let me know down below. And I will move.
Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again.
Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any Town Pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.
Right down the road, pump it up. Oh yeah.
Okay, to finish off this video, I want to give a Big Sky preview going into week 10. I want to preview all the games happening in the Big Sky quickly because, I'm coming up on an hour here and I don't want to be on here too long. But Big Sky preview going into week 10. We got a lot of good games. Not a lot of good games. We got some good games being played, and I'm going to talk about them. Montana State at Eastern Washington. Montana State is 8-0. They go to Cheney and play Eastern Washington, who's 2-6. That game is going to be played at 2 p.m. on Saturday. 3 games start at 2 p.m. on Saturday for the Big Sky Conference this week, and Montana State Eastern Washington is one of them. They will, I don't know, 2 p.m. ESPN Plus. I think Eastern Washington could potentially win this game. I think this could be a good test for the Eastern Montana State defense. They haven't seen probably an offense like Eastern Washington so far this year. So I think this could be a good test for them. Obviously, I think Montana State's going to win this game. I think they should win by 3 or 4 touchdowns. But Eastern Washington has been giving people games. They gave Montana a game. Not to say Montana is Montana State. Montana State has separated themselves from everybody else in the Big Sky so far. But obviously, those games still have to be played. Montana is going to play Montana State. Montana State is going to play UC Davis, so we will see that. But so far, Montana State looks different than everybody else, and I suspect that they will win by a decent margin. But you guys can go watch that game. It's getting played on ESPN Plus on 2 p.m. at 2 p.m. on ESPN Plus. Let me know what you think about that game. We got Weber State and Northern Arizona. That game is being played on Saturday at 2 p.m. on ESPN Plus. I don't know. I don't know what to think about this game. I think Northern Arizona should win this game, but Weber State's been up and down. Both teams are coming off of a bye. I'm going to pick Northern Arizona to win that game. But Weber State, they can put up points sometimes, but then sometimes they look completely inept. They're 3-5 for a reason. Northern Arizona's 4-4 for a reason. They've been close in games, but they can't get over that hump. They lost to Idaho. They lost to Montana. They lost to some non-conference teams as well. So I don't know what to think about Northern Arizona. I really don't know what to think about Weber State, but that game is being delayed at 2 p.m. in Flagstaff on ESPN+. You guys let me know what you guys think about that game. If you're going to watch that game, let me know. If you do, I'll probably watch it. I don't know why I always say that, but we got Montana's game next week too, so they play at 3, so I probably won't be able to watch that game. I'll probably have to watch it back, to be honest. But, yeah, we will see. We will see. Well, Montana's on the road, so I'll definitely actually probably watch Weber State and Northern Arizona. Let me take that back. But I would pick Northern Arizona to win that game just because of defense. I don't think Weber State really tears them up the way they've been tearing some other teams up. Alex McLaughlin, best safety in the conference, one of the best safeties in the country, is a playmaker, and he's a player to be reckoned with. But you guys let me know what you guys think of that game, and what do you guys think about that game? Who do you guys think comes out on top? Next, we got Northern Colorado and UC Davis. I suspect that game is being played in Davis, California at 2 p.m. on ESPN+. I got Davis winning that game by 3 or 4 scores, 4 or 5 scores. I got them putting up 40 on Northern Colorado. I got them putting up 50 on Northern Colorado. 40 or 50 on Northern Colorado. It's going to be a blowout. Obviously, I've talked a ton about Northern Colorado because Montana played them this week, so I just talked about my reaction from that game at the beginning of this video, and I see UC Davis doing even worse than Montana did. Land Larison should have over 200 all-purpose yards. Miles Hastings should throw for 300 plus, and they should throw it all over the place. Their receiver, Mbatu, might have over 100 receiving yards as well, but we will see. But that game shouldn't be close. I don't see Northern Colorado upsetting UC Davis, especially not at home, but we will see. Next, you got Montana at Cal Poly being played in San Luis Obispo at 3 p.m. on ESPN+. I got Montana winning this game by 3 or 4 scores. I would really love Montana's offense to look smoother this week. I would love their defense to stay on what they've been doing. I suspect that I don't know what to expect from the defense. I really don't know what to expect from the defense, but their offense has to look a little better than they did in this Northern Colorado, because their offense has been the thing that has been the difference maker this year, but their defense also has to, I think at this point in the season, you would love to see people improve at this point in the season, but I think people are who they are at this point in the season. I think it's hard to ask for more from people than what you are currently getting, because I think it is what it is at this point. Not to say that these teams can't change or that things can't be fixed, but you're 9 games into the season at this point. You are who you are, and if you aren't somebody different, you're not going to be somebody different. You're not just going to miraculously change into a different team. Those things are done in the offseason. That's why the offseason and training camp is really big. That's when you set your culture. Once you get this far into the season, your team really is who they are, and they're not really going to change. And I know that might disappoint some Montana fans, but their defense is not good this year, and I don't think that's really going to change. I think they really are who they are. Their defense, not to say, their defense hasn't played good football this year. They've had some good low-scoring games. They were able to hold Northern Arizona to a low point total at 20. They were able to shut out Northern Colorado, but neither of those teams are particularly really good offensively in the first place. So that is what it is, and I mean what I say. I don't mean to bash Montana, but they are who they are, and they're not really going to change at this point, so they really got to hope that they can outscore teams. And maybe they could change. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they miraculously change, but I don't think I've seen it happen a ton in season. But we will see. Montana, Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, 3 p.m. ESPN Plus on Saturday. Last game is Portland State at Sacramento State. Portland State is 1-6. They have a canceled game against South Dakota that they didn't end up playing, and Sacramento State is 3-5. 7 p.m. ESPN Plus on Saturday. That's going to be not a really good game. I think Sac State should win that game, but Portland State could get them. Sac State hasn't been having a good year. Neither has Portland State. Neither is a really good team. That game is going to be played at night, Big Sky After Dark at 7 p.m. on ESPN Plus in Sacramento, California. That should be a really good game. Go check it out. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that game. Caden Bennett's been not on the field. He's been hurt, I think. Carson Conklin's been trying to fill in. He's a good player, but, Elijah Tautoliver is really carrying that team. Their defense hasn't been able to stop too many people the way I thought they would be able to. Andy Thompson really is looking for some answers right now. It's only his second year as the head coach, so we will see how things shape up. But those are the games being played in the Big Sky Conference this weekend. Let me know what game you are watching. If I had to pick a game to watch, I would say Weber State at Arizona, Northern Arizona, and Eastern Washington at Montana, or Montana State at Eastern Washington, just because I think, there's going to be points put up in that Montana State-Eastern Washington game, and that's going to be a good test for the Montana State defense. So if you're really somebody who's still standing on the fence about this Montana State team and thinking, what else tests could they take, UC Davis is going to be a good test for them because they're good all around. But Eastern Washington has a good offense, so they might be able to show you some kinks in that Montana State defense that we might not have seen this year. I don't 100% suspect that, but I think the best game that'll be played in the Big Sky Conference this weekend will be Weber State and Northern Arizona. So you guys let me know in the comments what you guys think about that, and I will move on. Okay, I want to thank you guys so much for tapping into my channel this week. Thank you guys for watching my video. I appreciate you guys a ton. Go watch my breakdowns. I did Montana versus Northern Colorado. I did North Dakota State versus Murray State, and I also did South Dakota State versus South Dakota. That's probably the best breakdown to watch, my South Dakota State versus South Dakota breakdown. Please go watch that. Please remember, you can catch the audio of this anytime you want on the Big Sky Breakdown podcast feed, which is on anywhere you get your podcasts. You guys can go check that out. My videos get embedded on Skyline Sports every week, so you guys can catch that. Under the Helmet is back this week. We sat down with Xavier Harris once again because we didn't get an audio or video for you guys, so we're going to have an audio and video. That audio will be on the Big Sky Breakdown or the Skyline Sports channel. You guys can catch that on the podcast feed. The audio will be posted through Skyline Sports, so we will be posting more about how you can find that audio. But sitting down with all the running backs each week under the helmet, interviewing a different one each week. Next week we will have Stevie Rocker. We were supposed to have Stevie Rocker this week. They were off for the bye week, so that's why it's been a couple weeks since we had Nick Osmo, and also we had some technical difficulties when we did Xavier, so we didn't get to get the audio or video out. We are going to get that out this week for you guys. I want to thank you guys so much for tapping into the channel. I appreciate you guys a ton. Thank you guys for showing me love. Thank you guys for continuing to tap in. I appreciate you guys a ton. Thank you so much. I will catch you guys next time. See you later.